Hey, everybody. I'm here with a professional producer, a recording engineer, and songwriter, and most importantly, a friend, Tim Hatfield. Thanks for coming today to Live One.tv studios, Tim.
Hey, thank you for having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk about your work in sound and the music business.
Right.
Okay, so let's start off here. Tim, how did you get started in the music business?
Okay, well, when I was young, I always just loved music and I really wanted to, get into studios and work in studios. So I thought it was really cool. I saw some picture of Simon and Garfunkel on one of my dad's records, sitting in a studio, and I thought that was the coolest thing anybody could do.
Was it the mixing board or
No, they
the
were just
glass,
sitting in the studio.
see-through?
Yeah,
Oh, the
they
studio.
were just sitting in the studio, and actually they were kind of looked like they were overwhelmed. But anyway, so I went from that, and I got into it when I was still in Texas as young. I found this little studio that was, and started trying to learn as much as I could from that. And in college, I got into electronic music, which got me into tape machines and things. So I started realizing that's what I wanted to do. And, I came to New York to finish school.
You started in Texas learning about recording studios and then came to New York.
Yeah.
Tell us about that time.
Well, I just came to go to school, and, it was a long time ago, actually. New York was a lot different than, it was a little rougher and it was more exciting. It's like, another thing was like the Rolling Stones had come out with Some Girls. I'd been listening to that record for a couple of years, and I thought, wow, New York, I gotta.
For a lot of people, it was really a part of the image of New York City because you have photos, but they were singing songs about the city.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on,
Right.
off that record. Miss You was the big hit, and then Shattered, and it was.
Right. Miss
Really?
You has the line about walking in Central Park, and Shattered also, references Manhattan.
Yeah.
On the east side, and
Yeah.
rats on the east side, and bed bugs uptown. Isn't that the line?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and it was real. There really were a lot of rats and bed
Yeah,
bugs.
so at that time I was like, well, I'm going to go to New York, because I didn't. There was really only two places you could go: New York or L.A. I guess Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up here. I thought that's where I want to go.
And what were some of the artists when you started, and what stages did you go through as you got more proficient in a studio?
What do you like? Well, yeah. I mean, at that time, you started very low down, and you worked your way up. I started. I went to Media Sound. Actually, I started at another studio, and I was an intern, and finally became an assistant. And I I kept wanting to go to Media Sound, which was a big studio on
A world-class
57.
studio.
Yeah.
Some of the greatest music albums that anybody has ever recorded were done at Media inside a church, a renovated church.
Right, on 57th Street.
And the ceiling was so high in there, you could throw a ball around there, a football, right? It was more than 20 feet, right?
It was 44 at the top of it.
Right, and a
Yeah, it
beautiful
was,
place.
And I'd read about it. It had been on records that I had seen, and I was like, that's where I want to go, when I got here. And it took a while to get there.
And that wasn't the only place that you'd been going inside and seeing how they did things, right? There were a lot of other studios.
Well, I'd started at another studio, and as an intern, became, like I said, and then became an assistant, and I worked for a while there, doing that, and like I said, I finally got hired at Media.
How have the studios changed from when you started with your interest, came to New York, were working at those studios? How have things changed today regarding digital recording and streaming, if you could talk about that?
Oh, well, the big thing is the digital recording and the workstations at home. Everybody has some kind of DAW or something. At that, when it first started, it was there was a little more science to it, I would say. Like, you had to. We had it all analog, and you had tape machines that had to run together and sync together and things like that. So there was a lot more to actually learn, and then you had to learn each piece of gear and how to use it and how to abuse it. I was good at that. But like nowadays, you have it on your computer at home, your laptop or whatever, and you can say, oh, I'm going to put a compressor on it, and there's a preset for it or something. But you had to have a little more understanding at that point. It's good and bad. There's good and bad both sides of it, I think.
Do you still use what you learned in the early days today in the studio?
Yeah, I do. I still use a lot of the tricks I picked up from working. It's like I said, being an assistant engineer, especially in those days, which was the 80s. There were these great mixers that would come in, work with Mike Barbiero, Mike Brower. They were at media, and they were just, I watch them do something, and I go, oh, that's really good. And then I might add my own thing to it or whatever. And then I still rely on those things a little bit. Even if I'm doing it digitally, I'll go, well, I'm going to set up that compressor like this now, or I'm going to use, trigger a gate on that from this track, or whatever. Still do it a little bit. I think now, I look at, young people that have it. You can basically make a record with your laptop, and to me, it doesn't have the full, like the bottom might not be right, the same or whatever. It doesn't have the vibe of like people getting in a room and playing. That's what I like. That's why I like that, bands like the Stones and people like that. It's a performance and people working together, and that performance that really, I think, touches people more. It's not about like, well, I can sit in here and play with my drum program, and now I'm going to take that guitar part and hit this button, and it's going to be perfectly in time, and then I'm going to, that's valuable. I mean, that's a valid way of doing things, but and it has its place. But to me, it's people in a room playing, and that makes music really worth listening to. It touches you.
Something you told me at one point, I was talking about, I think it was the drums and adding all kinds of effects to a drum. And I've never forgotten, you said, well, sometimes the listener might appreciate it if you don't add all those effects. And you really hear what is being heard in the studio.
Yeah, I think really a lot of things. Well, if you look at the 80s, there was so much effect on drums and things like that, namely like the gated reverbs and gated room tracks and stuff like that.
Can I ask you, I'm sorry to interrupt you, I'll remember my question. Please continue.
Okay, well that was...
We're talking about gated reverb and on...
Right, yeah, so there was things like that. You're going to have to repeat the question now, I think. Right.
Well, I remember you'd once told me, instead of, layering a whole bunch of effects on some drums, that the listener might appreciate it if you didn't do that, and they could hear the same thing that was actually coming as if they were in the room.
Yeah, that's... one of the ways I look at recording basically is like, if you have good players, they're going to make something that really sounds good, and they're going to do it in the room, and you want to get that. Actually, yeah, you want to put maybe you're going to put a reverb on or a delay or maybe something here and there. But to me, I always left it up to, even when it was back in the day when you had these $10,000 delay units, and people would go, "Oh, isn't your delay better than mine?" Well, no. If you put your delay pedal on and let it hit the amp and make that's a sound. That's your sound. Let me take that and put it in. Maybe I'll do something later to reinforce it or whatever, but that's the way I look at it. It goes back to the live performance, bringing out what the people that are playing are putting out.
Tell me, just kind of side topic though, but talk about overproduction. If somebody had a full drum kit, how many microphones would somebody, I guess they still do it today, but in some of the big studios, would they have a mic on every drum?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of, it's one of those things that it's not wrong. And I put mics on every drum, but I'll end up using maybe half of them. And it's more like, I'll have more like out in a room or whatever, different room tracks that I will use if it helps the song. It's all about the song. That's one of the things that I really, in the 80s, it was almost like it was the drum sound that mattered. It didn't matter. The song didn't matter.
Yeah.
And there's some really great songs, but now you go, I can't listen to that because of the drum sample and that was put on it. It's just, and it,
is there a general rule which instrument might be more prominent in a mix, the vocals or the drums, or is...
Well, I think in pop music, any pop music, the vocals should be the primary thing. I mean, but then the guitar riffs and and the drums, everything should be in its place. Sometimes it goes back to what serves the song the best. Lee Scratch Perry, remember, from the reggae scene in Jamaica. He always said, "Get something you like, you just turn it up."
That's nice.
That's it.
Back before people did a lot of digital recording, there was the analog, and analog was also tape, and in the big studios it could be 1 inch or 2 inches.
Yeah.
And in some studios they'd have even two machines and they would interlock them, right?
Yeah.
And they'd maybe have 48 tracks, which was...
Right, or might have 72.
Wow. And I heard that even when digital recording became standard, that artists like Prince, when he created Paisley Studios, made sure that there was a 2-inch analog tape recorder around, because that's where he felt the best sound was captured.
Yeah, I think, well, a lot of people, I mean, people could argue with you, but even to me, I know when I like the bottom from the tape machines, from the analog. There's a warmth and comfort to it, almost like the difference between, when you put on vinyl, sometimes, I'll be at home, I'll put something on streaming, or, coming out of my computer, and even though it's going through nice speakers, and it sounds good, but it's great while I'm cleaning the apartment or cooking or whatever. But then I'll sit back and I want to listen to music. Put on a record, and when you do, there's something about it. Even like if you have people over, a couple of people over, and you're listening, you go, "Hey, listen to this record." Might be just because that's the way I grew up as a kid. We would always go over to our friend's house and put on the record, hey, I got this new record.
And
you
look
know.
at the album cover back and
Yeah,
front until
yeah,
you
right?
knew it like the palm of your hands.
Yeah, and the artwork of the thing, and and then I read every credit and every, follow along with the lyrics and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, that was great times, I thought. But even now, like, the other night, a friend came over and I put on a record, an old record, and we were like, wow, just stopped, and it relaxed you a little more. That's one of the things, I don't know why it is. I could go get all zen about it, but, digital and analog, which analog is more of a natural thing, natural phenomena. And digital, it's pictures of the sound, it's like little, that's a way of thinking about it, each sample. And there's little gaps between each sample, to make it
cohesive.
Yeah, well, to make it, to put it in a real layman's terms, But the more samples, the better it is.
How about Sting from the Police? Somebody told me when he records his bass that he would use 6 tracks. And have you ever seen people use more than 1 track for their bass, or 2? I mean, I heard he used 6, and I don't know if it just gives he would EQ each one a little differently, or whether somebody was misinforming me. But do people?
I wasn't there.
Okay.
But anyway,
That's
not unusual. I wouldn't, and different. There's a basic thing. There's like a direct and an amp. That's a basic way of recording basses. People do that, but he might have had 2 amps, and like you said, there might have been 2 directs. One could have been going through some kind of effects box or something. One might be EQ'd differently or compressed differently. So having 4 or 5 tracks on one instrument, in those days it was tough because you had a limited amount of tracks.
Right.
Now it's unlimited. It's like,
in those days it might be typical that the drums had 6 tracks or even more, right?
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and there again, like I said, it was more difficult in those days. I mean, typically, when it was 16 tracks, the drums would have ended up on probably 4 tracks. And you had to get the mix of it pretty well together when you put it down. And with 24 tracks, depending on how much it was going to get together, what you were going to do later. But then when we started syncing machines together, which you would basically put down a bigger spread of things, and not make those final decisions. And a lot of it, people will say, yeah, well, it's great because you had to make the decision. This is the way the drums were going to sound throughout right now. Whereas now we put every microphone on a different channel in our computer, and we decide later if we're going to use them or not, or how much we're going to use them, or how that's going to be processed, So, and then you pass it on. You can do 100 different mixes of it,
Yeah, so there's no shortage of tracks anymore.
Yeah.
Or being able to run mixes and not spending the money on the Ampex tape, which was a couple of $100 or $160 for 11 minutes at.
They're 15 minutes at
15
30
minutes.
IPS.
And they were really heavy too, They were pretty darn cool though,
Yeah. It was a different time for sure. I mean, it was. I kind of miss those days, with the big consoles and everything. I still work on consoles, but and the tape machines. But it was such a pain too. Like waiting for those machines to lock, and then the downbeat of the song would come and they weren't locked, and
Can you remember the first time somebody showed you floating faders, which move around, and you don't even need to have your hands on the console, after you've programmed it? I mean, floating faders. It seemed like there was a ghost in the room. I mean,
Yeah, flying faders. But there was a few different systems. My favorite one was flying faders, which came on Neve consoles. But before that, there was NECAM, which I heard about a lot. We didn't have it at Media. But so I guess it was like the Police watching every little thing she does is magic. They were, the NECAM was going and they were jumping on the console.
right.
And I was, whoa, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it sure is cool. Hey, tell us about some high points when you got to work with your heroes.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess the biggest thing was worked on the Keith Richards record, Main Offender, which, if you haven't noticed by now, I love the Stones. So that was a major high point in my life.
Yeah, I can believe it.
So, and actually changed a lot of my life, I think. But yeah, so that was great. And I remember going in the first day, and they'd already been working on the record for a while. But you know, to hear that band in the studio playing, it was just, you know, it's over the top. You know, it's like, and he was a really great guy, you know, and never put down the guitar throughout the months that I worked on the record. He would always be playing something, you know.
And the name of the band that he formed for that album, it was?
Well, there was the Expensive Winos, which was Charlie Drayton, Steve Jordan, Waddy Wachtel, and Ivan Neville. And the night I came in, which was kind of, somebody called in sick and they needed somebody, so I got to come in.
Wow.
You know, and then, you know, I just remember having a really great time sitting there and going, whoa, you know,
yeah,
listening to that
I
band.
call that having too much fun.
Yeah.
Too much
and
fun.
let's see, some others, you know, and as another thing, like, I worked with this band called Honey West, and actually this week I'm going to start one of the players, Ted Zurkowski, who was the main writer. He was partners with Ian MacDonald, who was another hero when I was young. He had started King Crimson and a founding member of King Crimson, and then he was founded Foreigner. So working with Ian was very, very insightful, you know, like, because he was a true musician, you know, knew all kinds of music theory, and, you know, multi-instrumentalist, and that was great. That was good too. So then there's others, you know, that, I mean, we probably have a limited time. I don't know if we want to keep
we'll just
going.
take
You know,
a couple more minutes.
Yeah,
a couple
go
more
on
minutes.
to
But you make
Ace
me
Frehley
think.
and
You've
Steve
mentioned
Earle.
some names, and what I thought when you mentioned their names is that they brought also confidence.
Yeah.
To it. They had the experience, and they sort of, can I say, they knew what they wanted to do.
Oh yeah.
And that doesn't always happen.
Well,
right?
I think when you get to a level like that, you know what you want, and you're gonna try and get it. And that's like what I was saying earlier about, these guys, they know what they want to sound like, and they're making the sound. You don't want to get in the way of that. You know, another, you know, even the younger, like I've been talking about people older than I am, much older. But like young bands, like I worked with Death Cab for Cutie, and they were
Death Cab for Cutie.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you know, and they knew what they wanted. I mean, Chris Walza was he was right on. He knew exactly what he was going to do.
Right.
So,
Let me take a minute. We'll wrap this up. By the way, don't forget to check out our channel. We have a lot of great music and other amazing things on liveone.tv. I hope it's not too rude to ask you to support us, maybe with a like. Give us a comment. And if people would like to get in touch with Tim, email us at info@liveone.tv, okay? And we will pass it along to you. And so again, if you'd like to contact Tim, it's info, I-N-F-O, @liveone.tv. That's all letters. Tell us more about the studio that you're a co-owner of right here in New York and what productions you're doing.
oh, okay. Well, I'm a co-owner and partner of Cowboy Technical Services in Greenpoint. And my partner is Eric Roscoe Amble. He's guitar player, producer, and we've been together making records for a long time. We don't really work that much together right now, but we've had a studio for 21 years, so we're pretty proud of that.
Right.
Then
That's like
Yeah, right.
5 minutes across the 59th Street Bridge brings you into Greenpoint.
yeah, and or you go through Williamsburg and go over the Williamsburg Bridge. It's what way I go all the time. But yeah, we've been doing it for 21 years, and now productions that I'm doing, like I said, I'm doing this one with Ted Zurkowski that I'm starting this week, and it's actually going to be kind of a rock opera. So I'm kind of into that. You know, he actually teaches at the Strasberg Institute, the acting studio, you know, and he's a member of the acting studio. And he's written plays and things, and his wife has Frog and Peach, which is like a Shakespearean company here in New York. And I said, we're going to start that. And then next month, I could start something with a singer-songwriter named
Before you
David.
let it go and tell me what you're starting, does that artist that you just mentioned, his name?
Ted Zurkowski.
Right. So as a person with some training and talk about a rock opera, does he bring a lot of confidence to doing the vocals?
Yeah, he's become, you know, it's not going to be, when I say rock opera, it's not operatic or anything, you know, but his singing he's just a straight rock singer, you know. And like I said, he was in that band, the band Honey West with Ian McDonald, and they put out a record called Bad Old World a couple years ago. And that was really, that's a pretty good record. You might want to check that out. And then after that, I'm in the next, I guess in July, I'm going to start with another singer-songwriter named David Gelman, who I've done a few records with, and then I've got like 3 or 4 co-writes on this record, depending on how things come out and what we put on the record, you know. Other than that, like last week, I had a song called Windmills, done by a band called White Collar Crime that I co-wrote, the leader of that band. And that's stuff that's just coming out now. And, you know, there's this band that I have that's like a recording band, a group of people called Black Diamond Jack, who I just played you one of those songs, you know,
Right.
from our YouTube channel. A couple of things. And
I like it very much.
yeah, we're
What's
actually
the title of the song again that we heard? The America, the Ghost.
Ghost of America.
Ghost of America. Great song.
Yeah, and then we're going to get together in a month or so and start. It takes us forever to do anything, but we're going to get together and do a few days in the studio and see we've come up with in the last 2 years. So, COVID's put a, kind of cramped everybody's style, I
Put
guess.
a mask on everybody. I was
Put
gonna
a
say.
mask on everyone. Yeah.
Tim, should we wrap it up? Anything you want to sign off with or say, or should we just say we'll
No.
go and hopefully you'll come back soon? And
Yeah.
talk
Thanks for
again.
having me. It's been a pleasure, really. And
It's been a pleasure having you, really. You have been listening to my friend and producer, engineer, and songwriter, Tim Hatfield. Thanks again. And don't forget to check in and see our other programming. Goodbye now.